until his death in late 2015, Wes Craven worked consistently as one of horror genre's most beloved and respected auteurs. While most filmmakers are lucky to have one seminal film, Craven is credited with reinventing horror on 3 separate occasions, defining the genre for the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Each of these landmark films showcases a timely and unique depiction of women, which when viewed in succession, revealed Craven's transforming representation of the female sex as his career progressed, in between the geysers of blood. Craven didn't start out subverting the misogyny of the genre. The director's first horror outing, 1972's The Last House on the Left, which he also wrote and edited, reflected both his love of art house cinema and his upbringing in an oppressive, deeply religious household in which he wasn't even allowed to watch movies. Yet he was fascinated by them, as well as the dark side of human nature, and those obsessions merged with his own feelings of repression to create one of the most viciously depraved works ever committed to celluloid. The story follows 2 teenage girls sadistically tormented and enslaved by a gang of psychotic thugs, only for the parents of the girls to enact an equally horrific revenge. The Last House on the Left is an endurance test for sure, yet it never glorifies the violence it so graphically depicts, and its underlying subtext of a culture in decay paved the way for so much of the bleakness that defined the 1970s.
Hey, no bra?
Of course not. Nobody wears those anymore.
Nobody except us drill sergeants.
It was 5 years before Craven directed his next proper feature, but he followed up The Last House on the Left with a more technically proficient yet equally savage tale. In The Hills Have Eyes, a typical American family is attacked in the Nevada desert by a family of cannibals who live in the nearby mountains, with the civilized clan ultimately resorting to the same savagery as their attackers. Like his predecessor, The Hills Have Eyes examined the darkest corners of human nature and even delved into social commentary by having the 2 families act almost as distorted mirror images of each other, with the line between them easily erased by the movie's end. At this point in his career, Craven had a bit of a reputation. Just take a look at these talk show clips from a few years down the road where they lambast the director, without actually calling him out by name, for his first 2 features, dismissing them as merely women in danger films.
1, Rick Sullivan, who is the editor of Gore magazine. Rick, we'll start with Rick, all right? As the editor of one of the leading Gore magazines, or horror film fan magazines, you've been quoted as saying that the types of movies which we'll be discussing tonight are cotton candy for the mind. I find nothing really sweet about driving a knife just below a woman's navel and then ripping it up. That's sweet.
Well, it's the same kind of vicarious thrill you get from riding a roller coaster at the defunct Palisades Park. Kids.
Well, ask me how sweet this one is. I'll show you one of the more gentle ones. All right? As a matter of fact, tell me how sweet it is. Let's see one of those slasher films, all right? Little scene here. That must be it. They always say courtesy of. What the hell is courteous about that? Whoa. I mean, anything sweet in that?
Well,
your
your staff did a very good job, because that is a clip from one of the most sadistic films ever made in 1972. But taking it out of context like that, I could see where it is sick and you would be horrified by it. But if you take it in the whole of its 90-minute running time, it plays as a morality play. Anything you've seen there, each one of the villains that did the slashing gets his comeuppance at the end. And most of the kids that go to see for the state-of-the-art makeup and the blood spurting and how it's done.
And so it continues.
All right. Let me introduce at home base one of the superstars of horror films. His name is Michael Berryman. He's also the host of Gorgon Video Magazine. And I'll start, and of course, Paige Mellish is with us. She's one of the leaders of feminists fighting pornography. So let's see if we can tie these 2 things together. You're one of the most popular actors in this genre of film today, Michael. One film that helped you reach these lofty heights, all right, is The Hills Have Eyes. Let's take a look at a clip from this slasher classic, please. Page. How does it... Seriously, how does it make you feel when you watch that lunatic stick the gun in a woman's mouth? And what is your opinion of how women are portrayed in all these films?
Well, it's not how it makes me feel that's a concern, because women aren't the ones that are going around and raping and beating and murdering women. Men are. But it's what happens to men from watching these films. And 2 studies have been done. One was done at the University of UCLA by Dr.
Now, get me all the, I don't care about the doctor, get me the UCLA, get me the results of the study.
Okay, this study found that from watching R-rated slasher films, men had an increased aggression and acting out of violence against women. They issued higher noise levels towards the women.
Was the study done by a woman, Paige?
Another study that was done was by Dr. Donnerstein, University of Wisconsin, in which hardcore pornography, X-rated films were shown to one group and R-rated slasher films were shown to another. Both groups exhibited the same attitudinal changes: an increased activity of violence against women in issuing electric shocks to women participants in the group, callousness towards rape victims.
Okay, all right, Michael, you say that women aren't degraded in the films that you star in. How can you say shoving a gun down a woman's throat isn't a violent kind of sexual imagery thing?
This particular clip from The Hills Have Eyes, and I understand Wes Craven's his inner workings, and he's a psych major in school, and sure, that's we can get the implication of that, sure. Okay, anybody that takes a, if you sit at home and you watch nothing but pornography and you watch nothing but the
steady diet,
you're not balanced. You're not balanced. What I do in the type of film that I do. People go to horror movies to be scared. You go to a drive-in with your girlfriend, you hope she jumps in your lap and grabs you because, dare you to look.
For Craven, whose strict upbringing informed his dark, searching vision, an awakening was as simple as a broadening of perspective as he developed his art. He told an interviewer that his daughter inspired him to rethink role representations of female victims, noting that she chided him after seeing 1982's campy comic book adaptation Swamp Thing. Quote, "When I made Swamp Thing, my daughter was watching it with me, and I had a scene where a female character was running away, and as in all such situations in horror movies, she stumbled and fell. My daughter turned to me and said, 'Dad, girls don't always fall down.' This made me realize I had fallen into the old horror cliche of the girl running from the villain and tripping on a rock or some other debris. I didn't really care for that, so it got me thinking about taking it in the other direction and creating some strong female characters. I certainly did that with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Then, of course, we got to revisit that again in the Scream films with Neve Campbell and some of the other female characters." End quote. There's an obvious lesson here in bucking trends and breaking stereotypes, but this should also serve as a loud call not to do stupid things in your movie. Can characters be stupid and do stupid things? Sure. Can they even do them against type? Sure. But don't let your characters trip on the proverbial rock when 1. It's been done, and 2. It looks ridiculous. Search beyond the cliche and you'll find something that works to replace your action space filler. Craven first imagined dream-stalking Freddy Krueger. The ideas bouncing around in his head were equally sick and clever. While sleeping, people are at their most vulnerable, making it nearly impossible to stop Krueger from offing whomever he pleases in gory, imaginative ways. Furthermore, nobody can stay awake forever, so eventually, whether it's after a week or 2 months or longer, you're going to enter Freddy's domain, and the outcome won't be ideal. While the success of 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street was in some ways unprecedented, it has nonetheless gone on to define much of what we understand of the horror genre. This is in no small part due to the presence of Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, one of the best known final girls in all of horror. At first glance, Nancy may seem like your average teenage fodder as well as your typical final girl, innocent, unassuming, the only one left standing. But Nancy transcends those 1980s slasher tropes by developing over the course of the film into a fully fledged character. Right away we see she's deeply caring. Her best friend Tina is rattled by a nightmare, so Nancy sleeps over at her house to keep her company. When Tina is viciously slain and the police blame her hothead boyfriend Rod, Nancy defends Rod's innocence. But compassion is only one of her defining characteristics. She's bright, resourceful, determined, and quite courageous. Clever enough to not just survive through good luck, but defeat and outwit her adversary.
Glenn, not now. We're here for Tina now, not ourselves.
If the final girl is narratively rewarded with survival for exhibiting constrictive and conservative modes of femininity, Nancy more or less meets the mark. She dresses in barely varying shades of baby pink, from her sweater vest to her nightshirts. Nancy also sleeps apart from a boyfriend, Glenn, when he and Rod crash her and Tina's sleepover. After Tina and Rod giggle their way upstairs, Glenn tries to make some moves, but Nancy sighs him off, preoccupied by a nightmare Tina had the night before. After all, Nancy's over at the house to begin with because Tina didn't want to sleep alone. Nancy's exasperation at Glenn doesn't suggest discomfort, but distraction. Freddy's wrath hasn't yet had real-world implications, but Nancy seems to sense something her friends don't. Terror's afoot. Is sex really the thing she should be concerned about right now? Her survival earning superiority is not necessarily of a moral brand, but an emotional and intellectual one. Sure, she's plenty virginal when compared to her hormone-heavy peers, but sex is construed less as punishable teenage deviance and more as punishable teenage sloppiness. Glenn falls asleep, against all of Nancy's constant warnings, with a disrobed woman on TV and music blasting in his ears. Neither he, nor Rod, nor Tina employs constant vigilance against the threat that awaits them after getting off and closing their eyes. Nancy's role isn't just reactionary or passive, screaming helplessly while waiting to be terrorized by the gruesome villain. She learns and builds and plans. She's one of the few final girls to take an active role in ensuring her own survival by hunting down the information she needs to inform her actions, moving the plot forward through her choices, and remaining resilient in the face of losing almost everything. These traits make her so much more than a stereotypical final girl, a mold from which admittedly have sprung many excellent protagonists. The problem lies in whether they're written as a genuine, emphatic character. Let's hold our nose and look at Nancy's spiritual narrative replacement in the 2010 remake. Here, Nancy lacks agency, personality, and conviction, floating through the film like an empty, limp shell. The real Nancy pivots on those cliches and punches them in the face. On a side note, this one scene is probably the only good thing about this movie. It's actually pretty awesome.
Wake up! You're bleeding.
So, Heather, we're approaching the 10th anniversary of this whole Nightmare on Elm Street thing. I mean, the original 5 very popular sequels. How has all this success affected you personally?
Wes Craven's New Nightmare managed to capitalize on the surrealism behind the celebrity of Freddy Krueger by introducing a fictionalized version of Heather Langenkamp as a protagonist, suffering from her association with Nancy as much as she's thrived from it. Freddy manages to break through to the real world once more, and Heather must take the lessons she's learned not just from Nancy, but from Wes Craven's commentary on the character to defeat Krueger. A bizarre masterpiece of horror meta-commentary, New Nightmare continues Nancy's story by merging it with Heather's. It's scary, intelligent, and highly recommended.
Mark. Ready. And action. Ring. Ring.
Practice ran late. I'm on my way.
It's past 7.
Don't worry. Casey and Steve didn't invite it till way after 10.
I'm not worried.
Good, because I want to swing by Blockbuster and get us a video. I was thinking Tom Cruise and all the right moves. You know, if you pause it just right, you can see his penis.
Whatever. Just hurry, okay?
Bye.
Ring.
Tatum?
Hello, Sydney.
Hi. Who is this?
You tell me.
I have no idea.
Scary night, isn't it? With the murders and all? It's like right out of a horror movie or something.
Aha, Randy. You gave yourself away. Are you calling from work? Because Tatum's on her way over.
Do you like scary movies, Sydney?
I like that thing you're doing with your voice, Randy. It's sexy.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Oh, don't start with me. You know I don't watch that shit.
And why is that?
Well, because they're all the same, you know? It's always some stupid killer stalking some girl with big breasts who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front porch. They're ridiculous.
In 1996, Craven took advantage of horror fans' expectations with Scream. Final Girl Sydney is more than a worthy successor to Nancy. Once again, Craven allows sexual politics to take center stage, dismantling the long-held rule that in order to survive, the final girl must be a virgin. Scream flips the script here. Sydney not only loses her virginity, but she does so with her boyfriend, who is soon after revealed to be the one causing all this mayhem. Rather than condemn Sydney for expressing her sexuality, the film shows her as powerful, pragmatic, and willing to kill to ensure her survival. While The Final Girl has been hailed prior, Scream was essentially the first major film to abandon the antiquated sexual politics of the archetype in favor of a modern, liberated female protagonist.
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Not in my movie.
Underage drinking and premarital sex has always been slasher bait, but by allowing Sydney to shrink the commandments of the Chaz Final Girl, he gave a necessary agency to a character who, under the old story logic, should have been doomed the second she broke the rules. And that's why Craven was so important. He wanted us to see structures as flimsy, and better when they're dismantled. Scream as a whole takes its female characters very seriously, and even the ones that are seen as pretty targets are so much more. Soft-spoken Craven's belief that horror films don't create fear, they release it, might explain why his films were so skillful at outlining the shifts of trauma's aftermath, and why they were often darkly funny as they scared the urine out of you. In a time before we all wanted to know what made our favorite anti-heroes tick, Craven's most memorable work suggested that for the women so often made victims in the horror genre, there could perhaps be a different storyline.
Hey, man. I know you were just trying to protect me. I'm just glad you're safe.
Sorry. Just wanted to remind everybody once again just how terrible this remake actually was.
I owe you shit.
You owe my mother.
Your mother's murder was the... No, don't stop, I got it. La, 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 la. Your mother's murder was... Your mother's murder was last year's hottest court case. Okay.
You owe my mother.
Your mother's murder was the hot... Fuck. Don't stop now. Don't stop, I got it. Your mother's murder was last year's hottest court case. Okay, ready? I owe you shit.
You owe my mother.
Your mother's murder was that... Oh. Okay, wait, I got it. I swear to God, I got it. I got it. Your mother's murder was last year's hottest court...
What's Leatherface doing here? He came to make up. There goes my chance with Sid.
As if.
As if what?
That's all I'm saying. As if.
I'll show Johnny Depp's brother.
I like that ending.